Welcome to the News Hour. The Supreme Court struck down most of President Trump's global tariffs today in a 6-3 decision that is a major blow to his economic agenda.
The court ruled that President Trump did not have the authority under a 1977 economic emergency law to issue such sweeping tariffs. The president responded forcefully, using sharp language to criticize the justices who ruled against him, calling them unpatriotic and disloyal to the Constitution.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. The Democrats on the court are thrilled, but they will automatically vote no. They're against anything that makes America strong, healthy, and great again. They also are a, frankly, disgrace to our nation. Although
a Supreme Court ruling wasn't supposed to do this. It wasn't supposed to shake commodity markets, reroute supply chains, or rewrite the balance of power heading into the 2026 USMCA review. But that's exactly what happened. When the highest court in the United States struck down the Trump administration's sweeping global tariffs. It didn't just end a legal dispute, it triggered a continental recalibration. Canada gained leverage. Mexico gained quiet strength, and the United States, far from retreating, began deploying new, more targeted tools that could reshape the economic architecture of North America for years. This isn't just a trade story. It's a structural story, a story about power, law, and the global economy. There are moments in economic history when a legal ruling doesn't just settle a dispute, it reshapes the architecture of power. The Supreme Court's decision to strike down the administration's global tariff package is one of those moments. For years, the White House relied on emergency authorities to impose sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of imports. The justification was national security. The effect was global disruption. Supply chains rerouted, prices shifted, allies protested, rivals adapted, and Canada absorbed billions in economic shock. But now, in a stunning reversal, the court has ruled that the administration exceeded the limits of its emergency powers. The decision doesn't just invalidate a set of tariffs, it redefines the boundaries of presidential authority over trade, a domain that has long operated in the gray zone between law and executive discretion. The ruling lands like a thunderclap across North America. Markets react instantly. Commodity traders scramble to reprice steel and aluminum futures. Manufacturers begin recalculating cost structures. Logistics firms reassess cross-border flows. And in Ottawa, a quiet but unmistakable sense of vindication settles in. For years, Canada argued that the tariffs were not only economically damaging but legally unsound. Now, the highest court in the United States has agreed. And with that agreement comes something Canada has not had in years: leverage. Billions in tariff revenue may now be subject to refund. Supply chains may begin to normalize. And the 2026 USMCA review, once expected to be a battlefield, suddenly looks very different. But the shockwave doesn't end there. Because while the ruling constrains one set of tools, it does not eliminate the administration's ability to act. And in Washington, the response is immediate, strategic, and unmistakably resilient. The White House signals that it will not simply accept the ruling as a defeat. Instead, it will adapt, deploying new tariff mechanisms, invoking alternative authorities, and exploring sector-specific measures that fall outside the scope of the court's decision. The trade war isn't over. It's evolving. And that evolution is where the real story begins. The Supreme Court ruling may have closed one door, but in Washington, doors rarely stay closed for long. Within hours of the decision, the administration signals something unmistakable. The trade agenda is not retreating, it's recalibrating. For years, the White House relied on emergency powers to impose broad, sweeping tariffs. The court has now limited that tool, but the United States has a deep toolbox. and the administration begins reaching for instruments that operate outside the court's ruling, narrower, more targeted, but no less consequential. Instead of blanket tariffs justified under national security, the administration pivots to sector-specific measures grounded in anti-dumping rules, countervailing duties, safeguard provisions, and targeted investigations under existing trade statutes. These tools don't require emergency powers. They don't rely on broad national security claims. And they are far harder to challenge in court. If the Supreme Court limits the front door, the administration will use the side doors. The new measures focus on specific countries and specific products, a shift from the global tariffs that triggered the legal challenge. Early targets include metals, batteries, critical minerals, and certain manufactured goods. These actions are smaller in scale but sharper in impact. Another tool emerges: regulatory pressure. Instead of tariffs, the administration increases inspections, compliance checks, origin verification audits, and customs enforcement actions. These measures slow down shipments, increase costs, and create friction, all without imposing a single new tariff rate. For businesses, the effect is the same: delays, uncertainty, and rising operational costs. Markets initially react with confusion. Steel futures spike, then fall. Currency markets wobble, manufacturers pause procurement decisions. But within days, a pattern emerges. The administration is not backing down from its trade posture. It is simply shifting tactics. Canada may have won the legal battle, but the economic battlefield is shifting beneath its feet. The ruling gives Ottawa leverage, validation, and negotiating strength. But the administration's new measures create unpredictability, sector-specific vulnerabilities, and new compliance burdens. The question becomes, how do you negotiate with a partner who has lost one tool but gained three others? The real transformation, however, is happening across the continent. Canada moves from defense to offense. Ottawa begins constructing a strategy built on predictability, compensation, and stability. The appointment of Janice Corrette signals a shift toward institutional, technical, and structured negotiation. Mexico plays a different game, quieter, more calculated, but no less consequential. Its leverage comes from supply chain indispensability, manufacturing integration, and nearshoring momentum. Mexico doesn't need confrontation. It simply needs to remain essential. Supply chains begin to reroute. Canadian metals, Mexican automotive components, and North American battery supply chains gain ground. Chinese intermediate goods, Southeast Asian electronics, and certain European metals lose ground. The continent reorganizes around predictability, not just price. Markets reveal the deeper shifts. The Canadian dollar strengthens slightly, the Mexican peso stabilizes, US manufacturing indices turn mixed, and metals futures fluctuate. Investors begin pricing in managed uncertainty. The 2026 USMCA review now approaches with a new balance of power. The United States remains the anchor of the continental economy, but now operates within tighter legal boundaries. Canada is legally validated and strategically strengthened. Mexico is indispensable, integrated, and quietly powerful. Power is now more distributed, more conditional, and more institutional than at any point in the past 30 years. The ruling may have been domestic, but its consequences are global. Europe sees relief from broad US tariffs and an opening for more predictable trade, but also a warning: a constrained US often becomes a creative US-Asia watches the power shift. China interprets the ruling as a sign of US institutional friction and a shift toward targeted tariffs. Japan and South Korea see opportunities in supply chain diversification. The WTO views the ruling as a validation of rules-based trade and a potential opening for renewed multilateralism, but the US is not returning to old-school liberalization. It is moving toward managed trade and industrial policy. The ruling redefines, not eliminates, presidential authority. presidents can still impose targeted tariffs, launch trade investigations, and apply compliance pressure. But sweeping global tariffs under broad emergency powers are now far harder to justify. This creates a new North American equilibrium. The US remains the anchor, Canada gains structural leverage, and Mexico becomes indispensable. This is not NAFTA. This is not early USMCA. This is a new continental architecture. The Supreme Court ruling did not end the trade war. It transformed it. The administration's resilience strategy did not restore the old order. It created a new one. And North America's recalibration did not settle the future. It set the stage for the next chapter, one that will unfold in the 2026 USMCA review, in global markets, and in the evolving architecture of the world economy. This is the new equilibrium. This is Tradeconomics.